This content discusses miscarriage and pregnancy loss, which may be triggering for some listeners. Hello, and welcome to the Rare Voices podcast. I'm Mark Rowland, and on the very first episode of this show, we're going to discuss what it's like to live with a rare condition that affects the blood or bone marrow.
I didn't know what was going on, but then it made sense. On one hand, I was happy that, there's a diagnosis. Not that I wanted to have sickle cell, but it made sense because I wasn't going mad. There was a reason why I was feeling all those things.
And I was really nervous to start with, and I thought, I won't say anything, but they've been such a help since, and I'm so glad that I managed to get involved in that.
Keep the hope up, I would say. So you need that hope at the end of the day. That's what I had. I thought, medical science might be able to do it, and that keeps me going.
Approximately 3.5 million people are living with a rare condition in the UK. Often, these conditions are little understood by healthcare professionals due to their rarity, and patients have to fight to make their voices heard. This podcast is a platform for those voices. Today, I'm joined by Naomi Awoliyi, who lives with sickle cell disorder, Shah Riaz, who is a parent of children with Dyskeratosis Congenita, and Javita Fawcett, who has Paroxysmal Nocturnal Haemoglobinuria. They're here to share their own experiences of living with and managing these conditions. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Just to set the scene a little bit for people who don't know anything about your conditions, what's it like to live with them? Can I start with you, Naomi?
If I were to put it in one word, I would say horrendous, but then you get on with it. It's really difficult. You have to keep adapting and adjusting your life around the condition. So right from diagnosis, you need to immediately equip yourself with information. When you're diagnosed and given the information, it can be very overwhelming. If I were to bring it to my particular instance, I was diagnosed late. Usually with sickle cell disease, you're diagnosed as a baby early on in life, but for some reason they missed it. I moved to the UK from Nigeria, so I don't know why it was missed, but I found out I had sickle cell when I got to the UK. And when I was first diagnosed, I was really confused because all my life I thought I was one thing, and then to be told that I have this condition that's inherited. So it wasn't as if I contracted it. I was born with it, but I only found out about it in my 30s.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Naomi. Shah, can you tell me a little bit about Dyskeratosis Congenita?
All right. Basically, it's a rare condition. What it does is it's a point mutation that's affecting the telomeres. So what these telomeres are at the end of chromosomes, they protect the chromosomes, but because of that defect, they're not being able to rebuild. So when a cell changes or divides, at the end the telomeres, they protect it and they get shortened. But because there's a difference in terms of genes there, the point mutation, what happens is that repair is not going on, and eventually that goes off, and then you got other problems like, other mutations that are going on into the genes, and this can affect the person.
Right, so quite debilitating.
Yes, exactly.
And JV, what about you?
Yeah, so I have Paroxysmal Nocturnal Haemoglobinuria, which is where the red blood cells are mutated, and so they're not recognized as self, and so my immune system kills them off prematurely, which leads to things like anemia and all the side effects that come with anemia, along with other organ issues like liver and kidneys. And yeah, it's very debilitating, and it affects the whole body because blood obviously affects everywhere.
Naomi, you mentioned you found out you had sickle cell late in life. How did you find out about it?
Well, I found out I had sickle cell because of failed pregnancies. Now, what I didn't mention before, sickle cell affects the red blood cell. And right from when you're little, you're put on folic acid, because folic acid is a medication that helps you with production of your red cell. So because I hadn't been taking folic acid from when I was little, obviously everyone who's planning to get pregnant start to take folic acid. Because I was taking folic acid, it wasn't sufficient because I didn't have the ones I already should have been taking. I was having lots of failed pregnancies. So when I went into hospital to try and investigate, find out more, a nurse was talking to me, assuming I was aware of my inherited blood disease, just said, because of the sickle cell, your pregnancy. I'm like, I had it. That stopped me in my track. I'm like, sickle what? I don't have sickle cell. I had to insist on then running the test several times before I could accept it, because my view of sickle cell was a death sentence from, my previous knowledge of sickle cell. So I didn't accept it at all. I went to 3 different hospitals. So I wasted NHS money because I wanted to prove them wrong that I didn't have sickle cell. So it was a lot to take in. I had, if I could say, I had about 6 to 7 miscarriages. Only to be told that it was because of my sickle cell was affecting me. I wasn't looking after my body properly like I should. If I knew that I had sickle cell, I would be looking after my body differently and preparing my body to have kids. But I wasn't doing that because I had no knowledge I had sickle cell disease. So yeah, that's how I found out.
That sounds really, really, really difficult.
It was difficult.
Was there any comfort once you understood it better that you knew why it was happening and that you could at least find a way to manage it? Or
yeah, it was a long road to that, because knowing that my life was based on a different information, things like the person I was married to didn't even know I had this disease, so I felt like a fraud. So it was like trying to find out who they were married to afresh, and they previously had siblings that passed away from sickle cell. So they would probably have a different decision if they knew I had sickle cell. Maybe they would have married me, but I didn't give them that option. It wasn't my fault, but they didn't have that option. So the comfort side of it was a long, journey to get into comfort. But it was good to know that, it made sense why I was going through a lot of things I was going through. I would have symptoms of sickle cell crisis, which is where people with sickle cell would have pain in their joint, in their bone, when there is occlusion in the vessels, when the red cells occlude, and then pain happens in the bone. I would have it when I was in university doing exams when I'm stressed. Stress can bring on a sickle crisis, but I didn't know what was going on. And people would make fun of me that I was trying to get out of chores or getting out of writing my exams. But then it made sense. On one hand, I was happy that, there's a diagnosis. Not that I wanted to have sickle cell, but it made sense because I wasn't going mad. There was a reason why I was feeling all those things. And then from there, I had to now settle into trying to adjust my life, into telling people, educating my community, my close network, my circle, that I've got this disease and I have to adjust my life. But it took a long, long time, because there were instances where I would act irrationally because I was breaking down mentally.
I'm glad you got some sort of comfort and understanding now, at the very least. Jovi, as I understand it, you were diagnosed quite early with your condition. So what difference did that make to your life?
So I was diagnosed at 17, which is early for PNH, because in PNH it's usually diagnosed in the 30s and above. But so mine's an acquired disorder, so I wasn't born with it. And I was really lucky that it only took a week to get diagnosed since I first got tests done. And that's really good. But I'm also unlucky in that I did acquire this condition early in life. So I haven't managed to live my whole life and then just get this late. But also, I don't know, I've just sort of learned to live life like this. And I don't really have like a baseline of normal as an adult for me. I was a growing teenager when this happened. So in a way that's almost easier, because I don't think like, I miss when I was like this, because it's been so long and I don't necessarily know what my adult normal would be.
Right. As I understand it, you resisted wider support initially, and then came to that. What changed your mind about that?
COVID. During the pandemic, I got really sick. I was in the ICU with meningococcal septic shock, and I got out of hospital and just thought, I need a community who understands what it's like to have PNH and how everything is much kind of more difficult for us. And especially during the pandemic, I had to shield while all my friends were maybe out doing a bit more than I could. And there were Zoom meetings going on from P&H support. So I thought, I'll join that. And I was really nervous to start with. And I thought, I won't say anything. But they've been such a help since. And I'm so, so glad that I managed to get involved in that.
Right. Great. And Shai, you have 2 children with DC. Watching them deal with that condition, it must have been quite heartbreaking for you. So when did you start noticing the signs in your children?
I mean, early on, it was like, it was unknown first, right? For example, right at the beginning, when my daughter, who's the oldest, she was about 3, what happened is that within a week, basically, she started bumping into things. We didn't know what that was. I mean, I was once in Kew Gardens and she fell over some spikes. She had all spikes in her hands. We take them out. What happened is that she developed cataracts very rapidly. And we took her to the doctor. They didn't know what to do. They knew it was cataracts, but didn't know at that point, there was no diagnosis of dyskeratosis or no one knew about it. Eventually, she got eye surgery. This was at age 3, so we were quite traumatic about that, what's happening. Yeah. Then she started developing ulcers in her mouth. And then we went to Guy's Hospital for many years, and they were looking at her. And eventually they came to some sort of diagnosis, licus planus. And they said, well, it's like an alien disease. No one knows about it. Yeah. So we're quite weird. And said, there's a DNA test now. You can do a genetic test. So we went through that, but nothing came about it, several years later. Then what happened is my son was born, the youngest one. And he also started suffering with, again, he had cataracts, age 3. And we'd done a genetic test at that point. And then they told us that by that time, I think the technology had moved forward to actually understand there's actually something called DC dyskeratosis. And they said both of them got dyskeratosis. And then we all done genetic tests within the family, the immediate family. And 2 of my sons are fine. One's a carrier, like me. And the older one, he's fine totally. No, there's no problem. So that's why we didn't understand it, And that took many years, slowly. So the things that happened is the cataracts, then the nails went, and then ulcers happened, and then there's slight skin discolorations at the moment. I mean, there's nothing significant, but the overall impact is that, it's like there's something going to happen, and you don't know when it's going to happen rapidly. That's what my take was at that point. And, the early stages, I was looking at Google, you look at all the negative stuff, and it says, this is going to end. So, you get into a really psychological point where you think people are going to die, literally. That's where I was. This was about 10 years ago. So it looked like a really dark place you're in.
Right. So when your son started showing signs, did you think it's the same condition, or was it a mystery? How did you respond then?
That was a mystery, but we, thought, well, there might be something similar, something's going on. But then with the genetic tests, they then confirmed it. And then also the effect was that we can't, this just said that we shouldn't have any more kids because it could affect 1 in 4. But, we had a high, 2 of our kids have got that condition. So that was another impact as parents as well.
So here's a question for you all. How do you manage the conditions day to day? How do you make sure you can live your lives? Back to you, Naomi.
The first thing I did was to work closely with my consultant, not to take anything as face value. I've got a care plan. Also have to be wary of the triggers, things like dehydration, stress, cold, extreme temperature. It could be too hot or too cold. Make sure that I'm, looking after myself, also nutrition-wise. So those are things I can do. They're within my own power. So when it comes to receiving treatment in the hospital, I go into hospital every 4 weeks to have what they call red cell exchange. It's a type of transfusion where they take out your blood and they give you donor's blood. that keeps me for about 4 weeks until my body starts to produce red cell, that is sickle. Then I have to go back again and have quite a number of, I think about 8 units to 10 units of blood every 4 weeks. So I'm really grateful to those who make donations to NHS Blood Bank. It keeps me going. And then I also have to take medication regularly, painkillers, and also medication that helps my blood flow properly without it sickling. So that's how I manage it. I just try to live a balanced life, try not to let the condition define me, which is why I work a lot with my charity. They've given a lot to me, so I'm giving back. And also be balanced, not let it stop me from enjoying life. I go out with my friends, but I do everything within reason and just be sensible about it, really.
Great. Jovi?
So I'm on treatment that I self-administer twice a week, and that basically blocks the part of my immune system that kills off my blood cells. But that does make me susceptible to meningococcal infections, which I've had twice now. But apart from that, same as Naomi, really, it's about getting the balance. So I try not to let it define me, and I try to do everything I can in life, but there is an extent to that. So I have to have a balance of, if I do this today, I'm not going to be able to do this tomorrow because I can't overdo myself, or my fatigue will get too bad and I'll have to have a day in bed, or I'll get sick somehow. So it's just taking every day as it comes and trying not to do too much, but not allowing it to really hinder what I want to do in life.
Great. And Shah, how do you and your family manage the condition?
Well, at the moment, there's nothing directly, I would say. But what happens is that we have to go to multiple hospital appointments. They have to do a lot of checking. So, for example, there's bone marrow every year. There's a lot of blood tests every so often, every 3 months, 6 months, blood tests. And then there's lungs checks, liver checks. So there's multiple different hospitals you have to go all the time. So, my wife does it. I do it sometimes as well when I can, but that's quite exhausting, when you have to go to so many, and people don't realize where you are, why you can't do certain things because you're, in the hospital. I don't tell everybody, the extended family, that I'm going, but these are the things that happen, and your mind is concentrated on that time, what's going on. Would the test be right? You're looking at each time the bone marrow test or the blood test comes back, is it going to go to leukemia or the blood's going to go low? So you're looking at that, and then you're relieved for a while. It's like, to the next one coming through, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hell of a lot you've all got to think about. That's really coming across here. What is the one thing you wish other people knew about your conditions?
That is not contagious. So when people hear that you have a blood disorder, they're like, okay, that is not contagious, and they can't be your doctor. People hear about you having anemia, they're like, you have to eat your spinach. No, it's not about that. So I would want people to educate themselves to the point where they can support people in their community that have sickle cell disease. You don't have to go into detail, like be a medical professional. Just, be compassionate. Like if somebody in your community has got sickle cell, know that they will be tired from time to time. They suffer from chronic fatigue. So if someone says they're tired, don't start to berate them and say, what have you done? So people should just be more compassionate and open to learning.
The one thing I would want someone to know about my condition is that it's invisible. And so just because I look healthy doesn't mean that I am. And you don't see me on my bad days. You see me on the days that I get up and I go to work, or I go shopping, or, I do podcasts. That's not every day for me. I spend days that I have to be in bed doing nothing but watching TV because it's all my body can cope with. That's what I think is really important.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, it's like Naomi said, because no one knew what this was. They thought it's a contagious disease or something, and say stay away from them. That's what was happening within the family. But that was because it was unknown what the things were. But there's other secondary effects as well, in terms of like they got learning difficulties. Both of the kids have slight learning difficulties. My daughter's got like OCD as well, like washing her hands always. So we believe that could be affecting her. We don't know. Doctors don't know if that's affecting, because they don't know the condition, what else it does throughout the body itself. But, they're nice, lovely kids. So, what more can you ask for? So there's nothing there that I would say it's affecting us that badly at the moment. But there's a fear of, the end of the train is going to run and then you're going to be in big trouble. That's the main thing, yeah.
Last question for you all. Just imagine someone's listening who suspects or is living with a condition similar to yours. What advice would you offer them?
I would want to say they need to work closely with their consultant doctor, and also they have to be their own advocate. Initially, when I was diagnosed, I was always afraid to speak up because I was like, I don't want to offend the medical professionals, thinking I'm questioning them. But they get it wrong sometimes. The fact that they've got a degree in whatever it is doesn't mean they don't get it wrong. So as a sickle cell patient, if you're listening to me out there, I think you want to know as much as you can about your illness, how it affects your body, and then take it seriously, look after yourself and advocate for yourself. Speak up when you need to. Don't hold back in a very polite way, but do speak up. And then know that the disease does not define you. You can live your life as well as you want it to be, but by looking after yourself and, just living a balanced life. Don't let it hold you back.
Yeah, I agree. Advocate for yourself, because we are all experts on our own conditions as well. Doctors have done the learning, but we've done the experiencing, which is just as important. And I would also say to find your community, because we're so rare and our conditions affect people in different ways anyway. So find the people that resonate with you and can understand what you're going through. Makes all the difference.
I would say the same thing. I mean, one thing is if you have a partner, work closely with them, because both of you are going to be affected, and also keep your spirits up, I would say, without that spirit and knowing, that medical science may one day turn around as it is doing, keep the hope up, I would say. Without hope, you lose all, your life enjoyments, everything. So you need that hope at the end of the day. That's what I had. I thought, medical science might be able to do it, and that keeps me going.
Yeah, message of hope. What a great sentiment to end on. And thank you all for sharing your stories with me today.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
In the next Rare Voices podcast, we'll be looking at parental anxiety and how to manage it. Be sure to subscribe to your favourite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And if you're really enjoying this podcast, be sure to let us know at super-rare.org/podcasts and help us make more of them. This podcast is brought to you by the Better Together for Healthy Bone Marrow Alliance, incorporating the Aplastic Anemia Trust, Congenital Anemia Network, DC Action, Fanconi Hope, PNH Support, and SDS UK. It is funded by the National Lottery Community Fund.